Picture this, a piece of parchment so old it crumbles at the edges, covered in faded ink that whispers of places that shouldn't exist. These aren't just maps, they're silent witnesses to secrets buried by time. What if I told you that hidden within these ancient lines and symbols are clues that could shatter everything we thought we knew about history? Lost cities that vanished without a trace, trade routes that defied logic, knowledge so advanced it baffles modern scientists, all tucked away in plain sight on 50 forgotten maps. From an Ottoman admiral's chart that shows Antarctica ice-free centuries before its official discovery, to a medieval map that places mythical creatures alongside real kingdoms, these documents don't just guide travelers, they rewrite history. Some were so dangerous they were smuggled, others so sacred they were hidden, and today we're cracking them open one by one. By the time we're done, you'll see the past in a way no textbook ever taught you. The question is, are you ready to uncover the truths these maps were never meant to reveal? Let's begin. Now, let's turn our attention to the first map on our journey, one that defies logic and rewrites what we thought we knew about exploration. The Piri Reis Map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, is a masterpiece of mystery. At first glance, it's a stunningly detailed chart of coastlines and trade routes. But look closer and you'll notice something impossible. Antarctica, depicted not as the frozen wasteland we know today, but as a land free of ice centuries before it was officially discovered. How could a 16th century cartographer have known what lay beneath miles of ice? Some believe the map was based on even older sources, perhaps from a lost civilization with knowledge far beyond its time. Others suggested hints at advanced seafaring cultures that explored the globe long before recorded history. The map's creator, Piri Reis, himself claimed he compiled it from ancient charts, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. But here's the twist. Modern sonar scans of Antarctica's subsurface match the map's coastline with eerie precision. Was this pure coincidence or evidence of forgotten explorers who mapped the world long before us? The Piri Reis Map doesn't just challenge history, it dares us to question what else might be hidden in plain sight. And this is only the beginning. Now, shifting our gaze northward, we encounter another map shrouded in intrigue, the Vinland Map. Drawn in the 15th century, this artifact claims to show Norse settlements in North America long before Columbus set sail. At first, it seemed like definitive proof that Vikings reached the New World centuries earlier than previously thought. But here's where things get complicated. The map's authenticity has been fiercely debated. On one side, supporters point to its detailed depiction of Greenland and a mysterious land labeled Vinland, which matches descriptions from Norse sagas. If genuine, it would rewrite the timeline of transatlantic exploration. But skeptics have raised red flags. Chemical analysis of the ink revealed traces of a modern compound, suggesting the map could be an elaborate 20th century forgery. Yet, even if the map itself is a fake, the idea it represents isn't entirely baseless. Archaeological evidence, like the Viking settlement at Elant's Oaks Meadows in Newfoundland, confirms that Norse explorers did reach North America around the year 1000. So, was the Vinland Map a clever hoax capitalizing on known history, or does it contain fragments of genuine medieval knowledge? This debate isn't just about parchment and ink, it's about who gets credit for discovering a continent. If the Norse truly mapped parts of America before Columbus, it challenges the Eurocentric narrative of exploration. Whether the Vinland Map is real or not, it forces us to reconsider the tangled web of pre-Columbian contact and the hidden stories buried beneath centuries of assumption. And with that, our journey through these ancient mysteries continues. Now, let's travel even further back in time to the cradle of civilization itself, Babylon. Here, we find the oldest known world map, carved into clay tablets around the 6th century before the Common Era. Unlike the maps we've seen so far, this one isn't about navigation or exploration. Instead, it's a window into how the ancient Babylonians saw their place in the universe. At first glance, the map is strikingly simple. Babylon sits at the center, surrounded by a ring of land labeled Salt Sea, which represents the cosmic ocean believed to encircle the known world. Beyond that, there are triangular regions labeled as distant, mysterious lands. Some scholars think these might symbolize mountains or even mythological realms. But here's what makes this map truly fascinating. It's not just geography. It's a blend of science, religion, and mythology. The Babylonians were master astronomers, and their map reflects this. The cosmic ocean isn't just water. It's the boundary between the earthly and the divine. Some researchers believe the outer regions might correspond to constellations or celestial spheres, tying the map to their sophisticated understanding of the stars. And then there's the text accompanying the map, which mentions mythical beasts and gods, suggesting this was as much a spiritual guide as a geographical one. What's remarkable is how this map reveals a world view where the physical and the metaphysical were inseparable. For the Babylonians, Babylon wasn't just the center of the map, it was the center of creation itself. This wasn't arrogance, it was a reflection of their belief in a universe ordered by divine will. So, while the Babylonian World Map might seem crude by today's standards, it's a masterpiece of ancient thought. It shows us how one of history's first great civilizations made sense of their world, not just the land and rivers, but the heavens above and the mysteries beyond. And with that, we're ready to uncover another layer of cartographic history. Now, let's step into the medieval mind with a map that's as much a work of art as it is a window into faith and fear, the Hereford Mappa Mundi. Created around the year 1300, this sprawling masterpiece isn't just about geography. It's a vivid tapestry weaving together biblical stories, classical myths, and the wildest rumors of distant lands, all under the watchful eye of Christ at the top. Picture this: Jerusalem sits at the center of the map, not because it was the most navigational point, but because it was the spiritual heart of the Christian world. Radiating outward are continents, rivers, and cities, but they're crowded with creatures straight out of legend. Ever heard of the Blemii? These headless men with faces on their chests weren't just medieval gossip, they were placed on the map as real inhabitants of Africa, a reminder of how little Europe knew about the world beyond its borders. But the Hereford Mappa Mundi isn't just a catalogue of oddities. It's a snapshot of how medieval Europeans understood their place in God's creation. Paradise appears at the top, often identified with the Garden of Eden, while the bottom edges hint at the unknown and the monstrous, a reflection of both curiosity and dread. The map even includes scenes from the Bible, like Noah's Ark and the Tower of Babel, turning geography into a sacred story. What's truly striking is how this map shaped minds. For centuries, it reinforced the idea that the world was a divine drama with humanity at its center. Explorers like Columbus would later challenge these views, but in 1300, this was the worldview that guided kings, scholars, and pilgrims alike. So while the Hereford Mappa Mundi might seem fantastical today, it was once the closest thing medieval Europe had to a Google Earth, complete with dragons, miracles, and a whole lot of mystery. Now let's journey east to uncover a map that shattered boundaries long before the age of exploration. The Kangnido Map, crafted in Korea in the year 1402, this extraordinary work didn't just chart known lands, it stitched together the geographic knowledge of two distant worlds, East Asia and the Islamic Empire. What makes the Kangnido Map so groundbreaking? For starters, it accurately depicts Africa's distinctive shape, complete with the Nile River and even the Arabian Peninsula, decades before Portuguese explorers rounded the Cape of Good Hope. But here's the twist: this wasn't just Korean ingenuity at work. The map's creators fused Chinese, Korean, and Islamic cartography, likely drawing on trade routes and diplomatic exchanges that stretched across the Silk Road. Imagine the surprise of European scholars centuries later when they realized this map existed. While they were still debating whether the Earth was flat, the Kangnido Map showed a connected world with Africa, Europe, and Asia in startling detail. It even included place names from the Middle East, suggesting Korean cartographers had access to Islamic maps brought by merchants or envoys. But the Kangnido Map isn't just a triumph of accuracy, it's a political statement. Commissioned during the early Joseon dynasty, it showcased Korea's place in a vast, interconnected world, subtly asserting its sophistication alongside China and the Islamic world. And while it wasn't perfect, Japan appears comically oversized, and some coastlines are skewed, its vision of global geography was light years ahead of its time. So next time you hear about European explorers discovering the world, remember the Kangnido Map. It's proof that long before Columbus set sail, other cultures were already piecing together the puzzle of our planet with astonishing clarity. Now let's step even further back in time, 3,000 years to be exact, to uncover the Turin Papyrus Map, the oldest surviving topographic map in human history. Created in ancient Egypt around the year 1150 before the Common Era, this fragile papyrus wasn't just a guide, it was a treasure hunter's blueprint. What makes this map so special? Unlike the symbolic or mythological maps of its era, the Turin Papyrus is shockingly practical. It meticulously charts the Wadi Hammamat region, a harsh desert valley packed with gold mines and quarries. The map marks roads, settlements, and even the exact distances between mining sites, essentially serving as a 3,000-year-old GPS for Pharaoh Ramses IV's expeditions. But here's the real mystery. Why did the Egyptians need such a precise map? Some scholars believe it was used to plan massive mining operations, ensuring the pharaohs' caravans could haul gold and stone back to the Nile without getting lost in the desert. Others speculate it might have had a military purpose, helping troops navigate the treacherous terrain during campaigns. What's truly astonishing is the level of detail. The map depicts the surrounding mountains in a way that's almost modern, using shading to show elevation. It even labels specific rock types like Beckhan stone, a prized material for statues and sarcophagi. This wasn't just art, it was science crafted by surveyors who likely walked every inch of that desert. Yet the Turin Papyrus Map also holds unanswered questions. Why was it found in a tomb, not a royal archive? Was it a sacred object or simply discarded after its purpose was served? Whatever the case, this fragile relic proves that ancient Egyptians didn't just build pyramids, they mastered the art of cartography, turning barren landscapes into precise, actionable knowledge. So next time you glance at a hiking trail map, remember, the Turin Papyrus did it first, and with nothing but papyrus, ink, and an unmatched understanding of the earth beneath their feet. Now let's fast forward to the 2nd century, where we encounter a map that reshaped the world quite literally. The Ptolemaic World Map, crafted by the Greek scholar Claudius Ptolemy, wasn't just a depiction of the Earth, it was a mathematical masterpiece that introduced a revolutionary concept, the grid system. Ptolemy's innovation was groundbreaking. He divided the world into latitudes and longitudes, creating a coordinate system that allowed sailors and scholars to pinpoint locations with unprecedented accuracy. For over 1,000 years, his map was the gold standard of cartography, blending astronomy, geometry, and geography into a single, cohesive vision. But here's where things get fascinating and a little problematic. Ptolemy's map contained errors that would echo through history. One of the most consequential was his depiction of the Indian Ocean as a landlocked sea, enclosed by a southern continent. This mistake wasn't just a minor oversight, it fundamentally distorted how explorers understood the world. Centuries later, Christopher Columbus relied on Ptolemy's flawed calculations, convinced that sailing west from Europe would lead him to Asia. Instead, he stumbled upon the Americas, forever altering the course of history. Why did Ptolemy get it so wrong? Part of the answer lies in the limitations of his time. Without the benefit of global exploration, he relied on second-hand accounts and estimates, some of which were wildly inaccurate. Yet, even with these flaws, his work was so authoritative that few dared to question it. The Ptolemaic map became a self-fulfilling prophecy, shaping not just navigation but the very way people imagined the Earth. What's truly remarkable is how Ptolemy's grid system endured. Despite its errors, his framework laid the foundation for modern cartography. Those same lines of latitude and longitude still guide us today, a testament to the enduring power of his vision. So the next time you check your GPS, spare a thought for Ptolemy, the man whose brilliance and blunders helped chart the course of human discovery. His map reminds us that even the greatest minds can lead us astray, but their mistakes often pave the way for new worlds to be found. Now let's step into the shadows of the age of exploration, where maps weren't just tools for navigation. They were weapons of espionage. Enter the Kangnido Planisphere, a smuggled masterpiece from 1502 that reveals just how high the stakes were in the race to claim new land. This map is a spy thriller in parchment form. Commissioned by an Italian duke's agent named Alberto Kangnido, it was secretly stolen from Portuguese archives where cartographic secrets were guarded like treasure. Why? Because it held the most accurate depictions of Brazil's coastline and Africa's true shape, knowledge that could make or break empires. What makes the Kangnido Planisphere so extraordinary is its precision. While other maps of the era were riddled with guesswork, this one detailed Brazil's contours just 2 years after its official discovery by Pedro Alves Cabral. Even more striking, it showcased Africa's southern tip with startling accuracy, proving Portuguese sailors had already rounded the Cape of Good Hope decades before it was common knowledge. But here's the twist: the map wasn't just a scientific achievement, it was a political bomb. Portugal and Spain were locked in a cutthroat rivalry, dividing the globe between them with the Treaty of Tordesillas. The Kangnido Planisphere exposed Portugal's hidden advantage, revealing how far their explorers had truly gone. When it landed in the hands of rival powers, it sparked panic and reshuffled strategies across Europe. The real mystery: who leaked it and why? Some historians suspect disgruntled insiders or greedy diplomats, but the truth remains buried. What we do know is that this map didn't just chart geography. It charted the course of colonial ambition, proving that in the 16th century, knowledge wasn't just power, it was empire. So the next time you see a modern political map, remember the Kangnido Planisphere. Behind every border lies a story of secrets, spies, and the lengths nations will go to claim the unknown. Now let's turn the page to a map that literally put a name on the New World only to try and take it back. The Wald-Seemüller map of 1507 is where the story of America begins, but with a twist no one saw coming. This groundbreaking map, created by German cartographer Martin Wald-Seemüller, was the first to slap the name America across the southern continent of the New World. But why that name? It was a shout-out to explorer Amerigo Vespucci, whose voyages convinced Europeans that these lands weren't just the outskirts of Asia, they were an entirely new continent. Vespucci's letters, packed with vivid descriptions, became a sensation, and Wald-Seemüller decided he deserved the honor. But here's where it gets juicy. Years later, Wald-Seemüller had second thoughts. In later editions of his maps, the name America mysteriously vanished, replaced with vague labels like Terra Incognita. Some say he realized Columbus, not Vespucci, should have gotten the credit. Others argue political pressure made him backtrack. Whatever the reason, it was too late. The name had already stuck, spreading like wildfire through print shops across Europe. What makes this map even more fascinating is its daring accuracy. For the first time, it showed the Pacific Ocean as a separate body of water, decades before Europeans officially discovered it. How? Some believe Wald-Seemüller had access to secret Portuguese charts or even hints from indigenous knowledge. So next time you say America, remember, this map gave it a name by accident. then tried to erase it, proof that even cartographers can't always control the stories their maps tell. And that's the power of a single word on a piece of parchment. Now, let's set sail for a map that wasn't just a guide, it was a power move. The Selden Map, crafted in the 17th century by an unknown Ming Dynasty merchant, is more than a navigational tool. It's a window into China's ambitious maritime empire, hidden in plain sight among trade routes and compass roses. What makes this map extraordinary is its precision. Unlike European maps of the time, which often exaggerated their own territories, the Selden Map coolly charts Southeast Asia's bustling trade networks from the Spice Islands of Indonesia to the ports of Vietnam and the Philippines. Every line is a trade route, every dot a hub of commerce, revealing how deeply China's influence stretched across the seas. But the real clue to its purpose lies in those elegant compass roses. Scattered across the map, they aren't just decorative, they're a silent boast of Chinese naval prowess. While European maps of the era focused on conquest, this one highlights control of winds, currents, and by extension, trade. It's as if the map whispers, "We don't need to conquer you, we already own the routes that make you rich." Then there's the mystery of its maker. Why would a merchant, not an emperor or admiral, create such a detailed geopolitical masterpiece? Some scholars believe it was a pitch, a visual argument to the Ming court to reinvest in naval dominance after decades of isolation. Others think it was a practical tool for merchants navigating the region's cutthroat trade wars. Either way, the Selden Map is a reminder that maps aren't just about geography, they're about ambition. And in the 17th century, no one played that game better than China. Up next, we'll unravel a map that might be more fiction than fact. Or is it? The Zeno Map awaits. Now, let's navigate the murky waters of a map that blurs the line between fact and fantasy. The Zeno Map, published in 1558, tells a tantalizing tale of a 14th century Venetian voyage to the North Atlantic, but historians have long debated whether it's a genuine record or an elaborate hoax. At first glance, the map seems to chart the travels of two Venetian brothers, Niccolo and Antonio Zeno, who allegedly sailed to the far reaches of the North Atlantic around 1380. It depicts strange lands like Friesland, a phantom island that appears on no other reliable maps of the era. The brothers claim to have explored these icy waters, even encountering a mysterious prince named Zichmni, who may or may not have existed. But here's where things get suspicious. The map was published nearly 2 centuries after the supposed voyage, and no other historical records corroborate the Zeno's journey. Even more telling, Friesland and other islands on the map bear a striking resemblance to real places, just mislabeled or exaggerated. Some scholars believe the map's creator, a descendant of the Zeno family, might have cobbled together fragments of older maps and sailor stories to fabricate a heroic family legacy. Yet others argue there's a kernel of truth buried in the myth. Could Friesland be a distorted version of the Faroe Islands? Was Zichmni a misremembered Norse chieftain? The map's inaccuracies might simply reflect the limited knowledge of the time, or a deliberate attempt to boost Venetian prestige in an age of fierce exploration rivalries. Whether it's a clever forgery or a misunderstood relic, the Zeno Map reminds us that ancient cartographers didn't just record the world, they sometimes invented it. Next, we'll chart a map that dared to depict Antarctica before it was officially discovered. The Bewatch Map holds secrets that defy explanation. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that seems to defy time itself, the Bewatch Map of 1737. At first glance, it appears to show Antarctica with startling accuracy, decades before the continent was officially discovered. But how could a French geographer like Philippe Bewatch have mapped a land buried under ice long before any explorer set foot there? The mystery deepens when you examine the details. The map doesn't just sketch a vague southern land mass, it depicts a continent split by what looks like a frozen sea, eerily resembling the subglacial topography we now know exists. Some believe Biuach had access to lost ancient charts, perhaps passed down from seafaring civilizations that somehow knew of Antarctica's existence. Others point to his use of theoretical geography, arguing he simply guessed based on symmetry, the idea that landmasses in the north must be balanced by similar ones in the south. But here's the twist: Biuach himself never claimed the map was factual. He presented it as a hypothetical exercise, part of a broader debate among 18th century scholars about the Earth's geography. Yet the precision of certain features, like the near-perfect outline of Queen Maud Land, raises eyebrows. Could fragments of older knowledge have slipped into his work without him realizing it? Skeptics dismiss the map as coincidence, pointing out that Biuach's other speculative landmasses, like a vast southern ocean, were completely wrong. But believers counter that even a broken clock is right twice a day, and Antarctica's presence on the map is too uncanny to ignore. Whether it's a lucky guess or evidence of forgotten exploration, the Biuach map keeps us questioning what ancient secrets might still lie hidden in plain sight. Next, we'll explore a medieval masterpiece that turned the world upside down literally. The Tabula Rogeriana flips our expectations with its revolutionary perspective. Now, let's journey to the 12th century, where a map unlike any other turned the world as we know it literally upside down. The Tabula Rogeriana, created by the Muslim geographer Al-Idrisi in 1154, is a masterpiece of medieval cartography, so precise it was used for centuries. But here's what makes it truly fascinating: south is at the top and north is at the bottom. Why would one of the most accurate maps of its time flip the world on its head? Al-Idrisi didn't work alone. Commissioned by King Roger II of Sicily, he gathered knowledge from Arab traders, Jewish scholars, and even European travelers to craft a map that stretched from Scandinavia to the Indian Ocean. The detail is staggering: rivers, mountains, and cities plotted with a level of accuracy that wouldn't be matched for hundreds of years. Yet the inversion baffles modern viewers. Was it a mistake? Far from it. In Islamic tradition, maps often placed south at the top. Some scholars argue this was practical. Mecca lies to the south of many Muslim-majority regions, so orienting maps this way made spiritual sense. Others suggest it reflected a cultural worldview where the Indian Ocean and Africa's wealth held greater importance than Europe. But here's the twist: Al-Idrisi's map wasn't just a cultural statement. It was a scientific tool, and its inverted orientation didn't hinder its usefulness. Sailors and merchants relied on it, proving that up and down are arbitrary when the information is sound. Critics might dismiss the inversion as a quirk, but the Tabula Rogeriana's legacy is undeniable. It challenged Eurocentric perspectives centuries before modern cartography, reminding us that maps are as much about the people who make them as the lands they depict. Next, we'll uncover how a map from Ming Dynasty China secretly revealed Africa to the world decades before European explorers arrived. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that quietly reshaped the world's understanding of geography long before European explorers set sail. The Daming Honey II, created in 1389 during China's Ming Dynasty, is a stunning fusion of Mongol Empire surveys and Ming Dynasty innovation, and it holds a secret that would astonish historians. At first glance, this map might seem like a typical imperial document, charting the vast territories of China and its neighbors. But look closer and you'll spot something extraordinary: the outline of Africa, rendered with shocking accuracy decades before Portuguese ships rounded the Cape of Good Hope. How did a map from 14th century China depict a continent so far away with such precision? The answer lies in the Mongols. Before the Ming Dynasty, the Mongol Empire stretched from Europe to the Pacific, creating a network of trade and knowledge that spanned the globe. Arab and Persian merchants traveling along the Silk Road brought detailed accounts of Africa to China, where Ming cartographers combined them with their own maritime records. The result, a map that placed Africa complete with its distinctive horn and southern tip right where it belonged. What's even more remarkable is what the Da Ming Honey 2 reveals about Chinese ambition. While Europe was still trapped in myths of sea monsters and uncharted waters, this map showcased a worldview where distant lands were connected, not feared. It even hinted at Chinese naval reach, with trade routes stretching into the Indian Ocean. Yet, for centuries, this masterpiece was hidden away, overshadowed by later European maps. So why does this matter? Because the Da Ming Honey 2 proves that the age of exploration wasn't just a European story. It was a global conversation, one that China joined long before the West. Next, we'll examine a map that sent Columbus astray, thanks to its clever distortions and mysterious ghost islands. Now, let's unravel a map that may have led one of history's most famous explorers astray. The Hereford Map, crafted in 1491, is a masterpiece of medieval cartography, but its errors might have sent Columbus on his fateful journey with dangerously wrong assumptions. At the heart of the mystery is Asia. Martellus, a German cartographer working in Florence, stretched the continent far to the east, making it appear much closer to Europe by sea than it actually was. This wasn't just a minor mistake. When Columbus studied this map, he became convinced that sailing west from Spain would bring him to Asia in a matter of weeks. Of course, we know how that turned out. He stumbled upon the Americas instead. But without the Martellus map's distortions, would he have even attempted the voyage? Then there are the Ghost Islands, scattered across the Atlantic. Martellus included phantom landmasses with names like Antillia and St. Brendan's Isle. These weren't just decorative, they reflected centuries of sailor lore and wishful thinking. Some historians believe these myths persisted because they gave explorers hope of finding land during long, uncertain voyages. Others think they were deliberate fakes added to sell maps to eager patrons. Either way, these ghost islands haunted navigation for generations, appearing on maps long after they'd been debunked. What makes the Martellus map truly fascinating, though, is what it reveals about the limits of knowledge. Even as the Renaissance dawned, cartographers were still piecing together the world, blending hard-won facts with enduring myths. This map wasn't just a tool, it was a snapshot of a world on the brink of discovery, where every coastline held the promise of the unknown. Next, we'll step into a map that wasn't just about geography. It was a glittering tribute to one of history's wealthiest empires, complete with gold-leaf deserts and legendary kings. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that doesn't just chart lands. It tells the story of unimaginable wealth and power. The Catalan Atlas, created in 1375, is more than a geographical tool. It's a dazzling visual epic of the medieval world, where gold literally glitters on the page. At the center of this masterpiece is Mansa Musa, the legendary ruler of the Mali Empire, depicted seated on a golden throne holding a massive gold nugget. This wasn't just artistic flair. Musa was history's richest man, and his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 shocked the world with its extravagance. The map captures his empire's heart, Timbuktu, a hub of trade and learning, and the Sahara's winding caravan routes, where gold, salt, and ideas flowed like rivers. But the Catalan Atlas is also a tapestry of myths. Alongside real cities, you'll find the mythical Christian king Prester John, supposedly ruling a lost kingdom in Africa. Then there's the River of Gold, a shimmering waterway said to carry gold dust, a fantasy that lured countless explorers to their doom. These legends weren't just decoration, they reflected Europe's desperate hunger for Africa's riches and the limits of its knowledge. What makes this map extraordinary is its balance of fact and fiction. The Mediterranean coastlines are startlingly accurate, thanks to Jewish cartographer Abraham Cresques, who blended Arab sailing charts with European lore. Yet the farther you travel from the known world, the more the map slips into legend, a reminder that even the most detailed maps were shaped by hope, fear, and the stories travelers brought home. Next, we'll cross continents to a map where reality and folklore collide even more dramatically. A Japanese cartographic gem hiding Dutch secrets and mythical islands. Now, let's journey east to a map that bridges worlds both real and imagined. The Agui map, crafted in 18th century Japan, is a fascinating blend of Dutch precision and local legend, revealing how isolationist Japan secretly absorbed foreign knowledge while clinging to its own myths. At first glance, the coastlines here are strikingly accurate, a testament to the influence of Dutch traders, the only Europeans allowed in Japan during its long period of seclusion. Dutch maps smuggled into the country provided hidden references for Japanese cartographers, who meticulously copied their detailed contours. Yet, look closer and you'll find something far stranger: mythical islands like Tengu Island, home to the legendary long-nosed goblins of Japanese folklore. This wasn't just artistic whimsy, it was a deliberate choice to weave the supernatural into the known world. The map's dual nature reflects Japan's conflicted relationship with the outside. While the shogunate banned foreign travel, Dutch Rangoku, Western learning quietly seeped in, shaping everything from medicine to astronomy. The Agui map captures this tension, its scientific accuracy coexisting with creatures straight out of ghost stories. Even the compass roses, borrowed from European designs, point toward lands Japan both feared and coveted, but the most intriguing layer, the blank spaces. Vast stretches of ocean are left empty, not out of ignorance but policy. By omitting sensitive trade routes or military strongholds, the map served as both a tool and a shield, hiding as much as it revealed. Next, we'll step into a medieval map where pilgrimage paths cross pagan symbols, and the Garden of Eden sits somewhere in Asia. Now, let's turn our attention to a map where faith and folklore collide in the most unexpected ways. The Borgia map, created in the 15th century, is a mesmerizing tapestry of Christian devotion and ancient pagan imagery, blending the sacred with the mysterious. At its heart, this map is a guide for pilgrims, charting routes to holy sites across Europe and the Near East. But look beyond the expected and you'll find something astonishing. The Garden of Eden, boldly placed not in the Middle East as tradition dictated, but somewhere in the vast expanse of Asia. This wasn't a simple mistake. It was a deliberate choice reflecting medieval Europe's fascination with the unknown and its willingness to merge biblical stories with distant lands. The map's pagan symbols are just as striking. Alongside churches and crosses, you'll find mythical creatures and astrological signs, remnants of pre-Christian beliefs that refuse to fade away. This duality reveals a world where old and new coexisted, where cartographers weren't just drawing geography, they were mapping the spiritual imagination of an era. What makes the Borgia map truly fascinating is its purpose. It wasn't just for navigation, it was a visual sermon, teaching viewers about the interconnectedness of faith, history, and legend. The inclusion of pagan elements wasn't heresy, it was a way to contextualize Christianity within a broader cosmic order. As we peel back its layers, one question lingers: why place Eden in Asia? Some scholars believe it was an attempt to reconcile classical geography with biblical lore, while others see it as a nod to the Silk Road's exotic allure. Either way, this map reminds us that the past was never as simple as we imagine. Next, we'll set sail with a Ming Dynasty masterpiece that charts the voyages of history's most enigmatic explorer. Now, let's embark on a journey across the waves with one of history's most extraordinary navigational treasures, the Mao-Kun map. Created during the Ming Dynasty in the 17th century, this map isn't just a chart of coastlines and currents. It's a window into the epic voyages of Admiral Zheng He, whose fleets dwarfed those of later European explorers. Picture this: massive treasure ships, some stretching over 400 feet long, gliding across the Indian Ocean, their sails billowing in the wind. The Mao-Kun map was their guide, a maritime silk road etched onto paper, detailing routes from China to East Africa. But what sets this map apart are its cryptic star charts, a celestial roadmap used to navigate by the heavens when landmarks faded into the horizon. These star charts weren't just practical tools, they were state secrets. The Ming dynasty guarded them closely as they held the key to China's dominance over the seas. Each constellation, each annotated star, was a piece of knowledge painstakingly gathered over decades of voyages. Yet, despite their precision, the maps also carry whispers of mystery. Some routes are dotted with cryptic symbols, hinting at uncharted islands or lost trading posts that history has since forgotten. Zheng He's expeditions were more than just displays of power, they were bridges between worlds. The Malkun map shows ports bustling with trade spices from Java, gems from Sri Lanka, even giraffes from Africa, gifts for the emperor, but it also raises questions. Why did these voyages, so advanced for their time, suddenly end? Was it politics, economics, or something deeper? The map doesn't say, but its silent gaps speak volumes. What makes this map truly remarkable is its legacy. Long after Zheng He's fleets vanished, the Malkun map survived, a testament to a time when China's reach stretched across the oceans. And those star charts, they're a reminder that even in the age of GPS, there's something awe-inspiring about navigating by the stars. Next, we'll unravel the quirks of a Roman map that turns geography into a surrealist dream. Leaving behind the vast oceans of the Malkun map, let's step onto the winding roads of the ancient Roman world with the Putinger table. This 4th century map isn't your typical geography lesson, it's a stretched-out, almost surreal snapshot of the Roman Empire's sprawling network of highways shrunk down to a single scroll. Imagine a modern subway map but for chariots and sandals. At first glance, the Putinger table looks like a cartographer's fever dream. Britain, just a squiggly line at the edge. India, placed so close to Spain you'd think a brisk walk could get you there in a day. But these distortions weren't mistakes, they were deliberate. This map wasn't about accuracy, it was about utility. It compressed the empire's vast roads into a manageable strip, 11 feet long but just 1 foot tall, designed to fit in a traveler's bag. Every curve and squiggle was a calculated trade-off, sacrificing scale for simplicity. What's fascinating are the details hiding in those distortions. Tiny illustrations mark rest stops, temples, and even hot springs along the routes. Want to find a place to change horses between Rome and Constantinople? The map has you covered. It's like an ancient trip advisor with symbols for inns, baths, and landmarks. And then there are the quirks rivers drawn as wavy lines, mountain ranges as little bumps, and cities crammed together like beads on a string. But here's the real mystery. Why does the map stretch eastward so dramatically? Some scholars think it reflects Rome's obsession with the Silk Road trade, elongating the routes to Asia to emphasize their importance. Others believe it was a practical choice, making room to label every stop. Either way, the Putinger table reveals how the Romans saw their world not as a globe, but as a ribbon of roads tying their empire together. This map also hints at a darker truth. By the time it was made, Rome's power was waning. Those carefully marked roads, many were crumbling, their milestones toppled. The Putinger table might have been less a traveler's guide and more a nostalgic tribute to an empire already slipping away. Next, we'll uncover how a colonial-era map's mistakes sparked border disputes that still simmer today. Now, let's fast forward from the ancient Roman roads to a map that shaped the modern borders of North America, the Mitchell Map of 1755. This colonial-era masterpiece might look precise at first glance, but its hidden flaws ignited conflicts that still echo today. Created by John Mitchell, a British physician turned cartographer, this map was meant to settle territorial disputes between European powers. But here's the twist. Mitchell had never set foot in most of the lands he mapped. He relied on scattered reports, rough sketches, and guesswork. The result? A map that was groundbreaking for its time, yet riddled with errors that would haunt history. One of the biggest blunders was the placement of the St. Croix River, a key boundary between modern-day Maine and New Brunswick. Mitchell's vague markings left both the U.S. and Britain, later Canada, claiming the same land. This sparked the bloodless yet tense Aroostook War in the 1830s, where farmers and lumberjacks faced off over timber rights. Though no battles were fought, the dispute dragged on for decades, with Mitchell's map at the center of the debate. Then there's the curious case of the Northwest Angle, a tiny chunk of Minnesota that's cut off from the U.S. by water. Thanks to Mitchell's miscalculations of Lake of the Woods shape, this geographic oddity became the only place in the continental U.S. north of the 49th parallel. Even today, reaching it requires crossing into Canada and back, a quirk born from a mapmaker's oversight. But the Mitchell map wasn't all mistakes. It was the first to label the Appalachian Mountains as a single range, and it accurately depicted the dense river networks of the eastern seaboard. Ironically, its very usefulness made its errors harder to correct. Governments and explorers trusted it blindly, embedding its flaws into treaties and land claims. What's startling is how these 18th century lines still matter. Modern surveys have fixed the inaccuracies, but some borders, like the maritime boundary between Maine and New Brunswick, remain contested. The Mitchell map reminds us that cartography isn't just about geography, it's about power, perception, and the lasting weight of a single line drawn in error. Next, we'll challenge the Eurocentric view of the world with a medieval map that dared to shift Jerusalem off its throne. But now, let's turn our attention to a map that dared to defy the conventions of its time, the Fra Mauro map of 1450. Crafted by a Venetian monk, this stunning work didn't just chart geography, it challenged the very way Europe saw the world. Unlike most medieval maps that placed Jerusalem at the center, Fra Mauro boldly shifted it southeast, acknowledging the vastness of Africa and Asia. This wasn't just a cartographic choice, it was a quiet rebellion against the Eurocentric worldview. Fra Mauro didn't rely on guesswork or mythology. He gathered accounts from Arab traders, Ethiopian diplomats, and even the travels of Marco Polo to create a map that was astonishingly detailed for its era. One of its most striking features, the inclusion of African kingdoms like Ethiopia, depicted not as a blank wilderness but as a thriving civilization with cities, rivers, and trade routes. This was rare at a time when many European maps either ignored Africa or filled it with mythical creatures. Fra Mauro even labeled the Nile's sources, correctly noting they lay in the mountains of East Africa, a fact Europeans wouldn't confirm for centuries. But the map's true genius lies in its humility. Fra Mauro openly admitted gaps in his knowledge, leaving empty spaces rather than inventing fantastical lands. Near the Indian Ocean, he wrote, "Here there are such great marvels that the mind hesitates to believe them, a nod to the limits of European understanding." The Fra Mauro map wasn't just a navigational tool, it was a bridge between cultures. It blended Islamic cartography with European artistry, showing the Indian Ocean as open to the south, contradicting Ptolemy's enclosed sea. This detail would later inspire Portuguese explorers like Vasco da Gama to seek a sea route to India. What makes this map extraordinary is its quiet insistence that the world was far larger and more diverse than Europe imagined. While others clung to dogma, Fra Mauro listened to global voices and in doing so, drew a world that was remarkably ahead of its time. Next, we'll encounter a map where reality and legend collide, filled with giants, cannibals, and the fears of Renaissance Europe. Now, let's step into a world where the line between reality and myth blurs. The Decelliers map of 1550. This French cartographic masterpiece doesn't just chart coastlines, it captures the wild imaginations of Renaissance Europe, where distant lands teemed with creatures straight out of legend. At first glance, the map's precision is impressive, detailing the Americas, Africa, and Asia with surprising accuracy. But look closer and you'll find something far stranger. In Patagonia, towering figures labeled "Giants" loom over the landscape, a nod to European tales of a race of colossal humans. These stories likely stemmed from early encounters with the Tehuelche people, whose height and stature were exaggerated into myth by awestruck explorers. Then there are the so-called headless cannibals of South America, depicted with faces on their chests. This bizarre imagery wasn't pure fantasy. It echoed ancient Greek legends of the Blemii, which medieval writers like Sir John Manville had popularized. For Europeans, these monsters symbolized the unknown dangers of uncharted lands, blending fear and fascination into a single, vivid illustration. But why fill a map with such wild inventions? The answer lies in Renaissance Europe's hunger for the exotic. Maps like Decelia's weren't just tools for navigation. They were storytelling devices meant to thrill wealthy patrons who craved tales of distant wonders. The map's lavish colors and gold leaf suggest it was made for royalty, possibly even King Henry II of France, who would have marveled at its mix of geography and fantasy. What's fascinating is how these myths shaped real exploration. The legend of Patagonian giants persisted for centuries, with Magellan's crew even claiming to have seen them. And while the headless cannibals were pure fiction, they reveal how Europeans projected their anxieties onto unfamiliar cultures, turning difference into danger. The Decelia's map is more than a relic of superstition. It's a window into the Renaissance mind, where curiosity and dread walked hand in hand. Next, we'll uncover a map that served as both a strategic military tool and a treasure hunter's guide, hiding secrets in plain sight. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that was as much a tool of power as it was a guide to hidden riches: the Rustam Pasha map from the 16th century. Crafted during the height of the Ottoman Empire, this isn't just a navigational chart. It's a coded blueprint of military strongholds and buried treasure designed for the eyes of the empire's elite. At its core, the Rustam Pasha map is a masterclass in Ottoman cartography, meticulously detailing the Mediterranean coastline with precision. But what sets it apart are the cryptic symbols scattered across its surface. Tiny fortresses mark strategic Ottoman outposts, revealing how the empire controlled key trade routes and defended its vast territories. These weren't just dots on a page, they were the backbone of Ottoman dominance, showing where to station troops, collect taxes, and repel invaders. Then there are the more enigmatic markings, clusters of symbols hinting at hidden treasure sites. Some historians believe these could point to looted from conquered territories, or even secret caches of gold and jewels meant to fund future campaigns. The Ottomans were notorious for their elaborate systems of wealth management, and this map may have been a way to keep track of it all, but decoding these symbols isn't straightforward. Many are tied to Ottoman military codes or local legends, blending practicality with mystery. For example, a series of crescent moons might indicate a fortified harbor, while a cluster of dots could signal a spot where pirates once buried their plunder. The map's creator, likely working under Grand Vizier Rustam Pasha himself, would have understood these nuances, but to outsiders they were indecipherable. What makes this map truly fascinating is its dual purpose. On one hand, it's a practical document of empire building. On the other, it's a tantalizing treasure map, whispering of lost riches waiting to be uncovered. Even today, historians and treasure hunters pore over its details, hoping to crack its secrets. The Rustam Pasha map reminds us that cartography was never just about geography. It was about power, wealth, and the art of keeping secrets. Next, we'll explore a map that bridged two worlds, introducing the Ming dynasty to a continent they'd never seen. Now, let's journey from the secretive world of Ottoman treasure maps to a groundbreaking moment in global cartography, the Reis World Map of 1602. This isn't just another map. It's a bridge between two civilizations, crafted by the Jesuit missionary Matteo Reis to introduce the Ming dynasty to lands they'd never imagined. Reis's map was revolutionary because it was the first Chinese-language world map to depict the Americas. Imagine the shock of Ming scholars seeing this vast, unknown continent for the first time, labeled with Chinese characters alongside European place names. Rix didn't just translate geography, he fused Eastern and Western knowledge, placing China at the center of the map to respect local sensibilities while still revealing the full scope of the world. What makes this map extraordinary is its blend of science and diplomacy. Rix used the latest European discoveries, like the accurate shape of Africa and the Americas, but he also incorporated Chinese cartographic traditions, such as the celestial grids used in ancient star charts. He even included annotations explaining Western concepts like the solar system, making the map as much an educational tool as a political statement. The Ming court's reaction was mixed. Some scholars were fascinated, while others dismissed these distant lands as irrelevant. But Rix's map planted a seed. It challenged China's idea of itself as the Middle Kingdom and hinted at a world far more interconnected than anyone had realized. Today, the Rix World Map stands as a testament to the power of cultural exchange. It wasn't just about geography, it was about opening minds. Next, we'll travel even further back in time to a map that dared to measure the Earth itself with astonishing accuracy. Stepping back even further in time, we arrive at a map that defied the limits of ancient knowledge, the groundbreaking work of Eratosthenes in the 3rd century BCE. This wasn't just a map, it was a mathematical marvel, one that came shockingly close to measuring the Earth's true circumference centuries before modern tools existed. Eratosthenes, a scholar in Alexandria, made his breakthrough using little more than shadows, sticks, and sheer genius. He noticed that at noon on the summer solstice, the sun cast no shadow in the Egyptian city of Sin, while in Alexandria, a few hundred miles north, a vertical stick still cast a slight shadow. By calculating the angle of that shadow and the distance between the two cities, he estimated the Earth's curvature and landed on a circumference within a few percent of the actual figure. But here's the real mystery. How did he get it so right? Some speculate he had access to lost knowledge from earlier civilizations, while others argue it was pure deductive brilliance. Either way, his map shattered the myth of a flat Earth long before others dared to question it. What's even more astonishing is how his work was ignored for centuries. Later scholars, like Ptolemy, dismissed his calculations, leading to Columbus's infamous miscalculation when he sailed west. Had the world listened to Eratosthenes, history might have unfolded very differently. This map wasn't just about geography, it was a testament to human curiosity and the power of observation. Next, we'll examine how another map's distortions changed the course of exploration for better and worse. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that reshaped global navigation, but came with its own set of controversies, the Mercator Map of 1569. While Eratosthenes sought to measure the Earth accurately, Gerardus Mercator had a different goal: to help sailors cross oceans without losing their way. His solution, a revolutionary projection that transformed navigation forever. The Mercator projection worked by stretching the globe onto a flat grid, keeping lines of longitude parallel. This meant sailors could plot straight-line courses on their charts, making navigation far simpler during long voyages. For explorers braving the open seas, this was nothing short of a game-changer. But here's where things get complicated. To achieve this navigational clarity, Mercator drastically distorted the sizes of landmasses near the poles. Greenland appears nearly as large as Africa, when in reality, Africa is 14 times bigger. This distortion wasn't just a mathematical quirk, it subtly reinforced colonial-era biases, making European powers seem more dominant while shrinking regions like Africa and South America. Critics argue that this skewed perspective influenced how generations viewed the world, prioritizing colonial interests over geographical truth. Yet, despite its flaws, the Mercator Map remained the standard for centuries because of its unparalleled usefulness at sea. So was Mercator a visionary or a product of his time? Perhaps both. His map opened the oceans to exploration, but also left a legacy of misrepresentation. Next, we'll see how another atlas blended artistry and secrecy in the Age of Empires. Shifting our gaze to the golden age of Dutch cartography, we encounter the Blue Atlas, a masterpiece where art and empire collide. Created in the 17th century by Willem Blue and his son Joan, this wasn't just a collection of maps, it was a bold declaration of Dutch dominance in global trade. Each page gleamed with gold leaf embellishments, showcasing bustling ports from Amsterdam to Batavia, while intricate engravings celebrated the wealth flowing into the Netherlands from its far-flung colonies. But beneath the opulence lay a shadowy secret. The Blue family didn't just cater to merchants and scholars, they also worked closely with the Dutch East India Company, the most powerful corporation of its time. Some maps in the atlas were deliberately altered or omitted sensitive details, like the exact locations of spice islands or naval routes, to thwart rival powers. Imagine a modern-day corporation redacting GPS coordinates to protect its trade secrets. That's the level of strategic censorship at play here. What makes the Blue Atlas truly fascinating is its dual legacy. On one hand, it's a triumph of craftsmanship capturing the zenith of Dutch prosperity. On the other, it's a reminder that maps have always been tools of power, shaping not just navigation but geopolitics. As we'll soon see, not all cartographic secrets were meant to stay hidden forever. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to uncover a cartographic myth that refused to die: the Sanson Map of 1650. Created by French geographer Nicolas Sanson, this map became infamous for one stubborn error. It depicted California as an island floating separate from the North American mainland. What's astonishing isn't just the mistake itself, but how it clung to maps for decades, even as explorers and missionaries reported the truth. The myth likely began with a misinterpretation of early Spanish accounts, where the Gulf of California's narrow entrance made the Baja Peninsula appear detached. By the time Sanson's map was published, the idea had taken root in European cartography, fueled by a mix of artistic license and the allure of the unknown. But here's the twist. Even as Spanish expeditions in the late 1600s confirmed California was firmly connected to the continent, the island label persisted. Some mapmakers, including Sanson's successors, kept reproducing the error, either out of skepticism toward new data or sheer inertia. This wasn't just a harmless quirk. The myth had real consequences, misleading navigators and shaping European perceptions of the New World's geography. It's a stark reminder of how easily errors can become entrenched, even in an age of growing exploration. As we'll see next, not all cartographic mysteries were born from mistakes. Some were deliberate acts of secrecy and power. Now, let's step back even further in time to the 10th century, where the Cotton World Map offers a glimpse into the medieval mind. This Anglo-Saxon creation isn't just a geographical guide, it's a window into a universe shaped by faith. At its center lies Jerusalem, the spiritual heart of the world, while paradise itself floats eerily above the earth, untethered by the laws of physics. What makes this map so fascinating is its blend of biblical storytelling and crude geography. The earth is flat, ringed by a vast ocean, and dotted with cities and landmarks that seem to exist more in legend than reality. Babylon, Rome, and the Garden of Eden share space on the same parchment, as if the cartographer saw no distinction between history and myth. But here's the real intrigue: the map wasn't meant for navigation. Instead, it served as a visual sermon, teaching Christian cosmology to those who might never read the Bible. Every detail, from the 4 rivers flowing from Eden to the monstrous races lurking at the edges, reinforced a divine order. It's a reminder that for medieval Europeans, maps weren't just tools, they were mirrors of belief, where heaven and earth existed on the same plane. As we'll see next, not all maps were content to stay within the limits of the known world. Some dared to chart territories that defied both faith and reason. Now, let's set sail into the realm of the unknown with the Dulcet Map of 1339. This medieval chart, crafted by the Majorcan cartographer Angelino Dulcet, holds one of history's most chilling mysteries, the infamous Isle of Demons lurking off the coast of Canada. At first glance, this island seems like just another blot on the parchment, but its legend is anything but ordinary. Sailors whispered tales of shrieking voices, phantom figures, and unseen forces that could drive a crew to madness. Some believe it was a warning, a marker of treacherous currents or jagged rocks disguised as supernatural terror. Others argue it reflected deep-seated fears of the unexplored, where the unknown was painted as the work of demons. What makes this even more intriguing is how the Isle of Demons wasn't just folklore. It appeared on maps for centuries. Even respected cartographers like Gerardus Mercator included it in their work, blurring the line between myth and geography. Was it a case of blind copying, or did these mapmakers truly believe in the unseen dangers lurking in the Atlantic? One theory ties the island to real-life tragedies. Early explorers like Jean-François de la Roque de Roberval allegedly abandoned his mistress and her lover near this cursed spot, where they supposedly perished amid the howling winds. Did their suffering inspire the legend, or was the story twisted to fit the map's eerie label? As we'll soon see, the Dulcet map isn't alone in blending fear with geography. Some cartographers didn't just chart the world, they populated it with nightmares. But let's steer our course from myth to reality with the Miller Atlas of 1519. This stunning Portuguese masterpiece wasn't just a map, it was a lifeline for explorers like Ferdinand Magellan, whose crew relied on its hidden knowledge to conquer the uncharted. Crafted by master cartographers Lopo Homem and Pedro Rionel, the Miller Atlas was a treasure trove of navigational secrets. Unlike earlier maps filled with monsters and myths, this one was packed with practical details, precise wind patterns, ocean currents, and even the magnetic declination of coastlines. These weren't just artistic flourishes, they were the GPS of the age of exploration, guiding sailors through deadly straits and unknown waters. Magellan's voyage, the first to circumnavigate the globe, would have been nearly impossible without maps like this. The atlas hinted at the treacherous Strait of Magellan before it was officially discovered, suggesting Portuguese explorers might have glimpsed it earlier but kept it quiet for strategic reasons. And those swirling wind roses, they weren't just decorative, they revealed the best routes to ride the trade winds, shaving months off a journey. What's even more fascinating is how the Miller Atlas balanced secrecy and sharing. Portugal guarded its maps fiercely, yet snippets of this knowledge leaked, fueling rival nations' ambitions. Was this intentional misinformation, or did spies outsmart the crown? Either way, the atlas became a weapon in the race to dominate the seas. As we'll see next, not all maps were tools of empire. Some were works of art that challenged the very way we see the world. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that reshaped how the world saw itself, the Ortelius Map of 1570. This wasn't just another chart of lands and seas. It was the birth of the modern atlas, a collection that brought the entire known world into one breathtaking volume. Created by the Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius, this masterpiece didn't just document geography, it sparked curiosity and controversy in equal measure. What made the Ortelius map revolutionary was its ambition. For the first time, it compiled the best available knowledge into a single, cohesive format, stitching together maps from explorers, merchants, and scholars across Europe. Imagine flipping through its pages and seeing the world unfold, not as a jumble of conflicting sketches, but as a unified vision of Earth's diversity. Yet, for all its accuracy, Ortelius couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Tucked into the bottom of the map, almost like a whispered secret, was Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. This massive, speculative continent was a holdover from ancient Greek theories, a belief that the southern hemisphere must balance the weight of the north. Ortelius gave it shape, filling empty ocean with a land of imagined riches and strange creatures. But here's the twist: no European had ever seen it. Was this bold guesswork, or did Ortelius have access to lost knowledge? Some scholars argue that whispers from Portuguese and Spanish voyages hinted at a southern land, while others think it was pure myth-making. Either way, Terra Australis haunted maps for centuries, luring explorers like James Cook into perilous waters. Ortelius's map, for all its genius, shows how even the brightest minds can be seduced by the idea of the undiscovered. And as we'll see next, not all cartographic mysteries were about empty spaces. Some maps hid their secrets in plain sight, wrapped in artistry and intrigue. Now, let's step into the world of Venetian craftsmanship with a map that defied convention, the Coronelli Globe of 1683. This wasn't just a globe, it was a towering work of art and science, standing over 10 feet tall, designed by the master cartographer Vincenzo Coronelli. Commissioned for King Louis XIV of France, it was as much a political statement as it was a geographical marvel. What set the Coronelli globe apart was its daring embrace of the unknown. While most maps of the era focused on charting coastlines and trade routes, Coronelli wove mythology and cutting-edge theories into his design, one of the most striking features. The hollow Earth hypothesis, a belief that our planet might be riddled with vast underground caverns or even hidden worlds. Coronelli didn't just hint at this idea, he illustrated it with intricate details, suggesting that the Earth's interior could be as mysterious as its surface. But the globe's secrets didn't stop there. Each continent was adorned with allegorical scenes, blending geography with storytelling. Europe, for instance, was crowned with figures representing power and knowledge, while the Americas were surrounded by imagery of exploration and conquest. These weren't just decorations, they were deliberate narratives shaping how viewers understood the world and their place in it. Yet the Coronelli globe also reveals a tension between science and spectacle. While it incorporated the latest astronomical observations, it also indulged in fantastical elements like sea monsters and celestial deities. This duality makes it a fascinating snapshot of its time, a period when maps were as much about imagination as they were about accuracy. As we'll soon see, not all maps relied on grandeur to hide their secrets. Some used simplicity as the ultimate disguise, waiting centuries for their puzzles to be solved. Shifting our gaze from grand globes to cryptic parchment, we encounter the Kangnido Map of 1452, a masterpiece where time and space collide. Unlike the Coronelli globe's physical grandeur, this Venetian map hides its secrets in plain sight, woven into intricate calendar rings and ominous prophecies bordering its edges. At first glance, it appears to be a typical medieval world map, with Jerusalem at its center and familiar continents sketched in faded ink. But look closer and the real story unfolds in the margins. The Kangnido Map's most striking feature is its series of concentric calendar rings, a rare fusion of cartography and chronology. These rings weren't just decorative, they served as practical tools for calculating religious feast days, lunar cycles, and even the timing of Easter. Imagine a 15th century traveler using this map not just to navigate lands, but to mark sacred time, a reminder that maps once functioned as both spiritual and geographical guides. Yet the map's true intrigue lies in its apocalyptic whispers. Tucked between the calendars and coastlines are cryptic Latin inscriptions warning of the end times. One chilling note predicts the rise of the Antichrist, while another describes celestial omens heralding doom. These weren't random scribbles, they reflected the feverish anxieties of medieval Europe, where plagues and political upheavals made the world feel perpetually on the brink. The Kangnido Map, then, isn't just a snapshot of Earth, it's a mirror of the fears and hopes of its era. What makes this map especially puzzling is its blend of precision and prophecy. While its calendars demonstrate advanced astronomical knowledge, its doomsday warnings lean into pure mysticism. Was it meant to be a practical tool, a devotional object, or both? Scholars still debate whether the apocalyptic texts were added later or if they were always part of the map's original design. Either way, the Kangnido Map challenges our modern divide between science and superstition, revealing how deeply intertwined they once were. As we'll discover next, not all hidden messages were written in ink, some were etched into the very fabric of power and conquest. Now, let's set sail into the treacherous waters of the Carta Marina, a map so vivid in its horrors that it could chill the bones of even the bravest sailors. Created in 1539 by Swedish cartographer Olaus Magnus, this map isn't just a guide to the North Atlantic, it's a window into the nightmares of Renaissance Europe. Stretching over 9 feet wide, the Carta Marina is a breathtaking tapestry of geography and mythology, where every inch teems with danger, from whirlpools that swallow ships whole to sea monsters lurking beneath the waves. What makes this map unforgettable are its grotesque and fantastical creatures, each drawn with unsettling detail. Gigantic lobsters drag sailors to their doom, serpentine beasts coil around helpless vessels, and a monstrous whale labeled Prista sprays water like a demonic geyser. These weren't just artistic flourishes, they reflected very real fears. To sailors of the time, the ocean was an uncharted abyss, and the Carta Marina served as both a warning and a grim explanation for the countless ships that vanished without a trace. But the map's terror isn't limited to the sea. Along Scandinavia's icy coasts, the land itself seems alive with danger. Tribes of Homo monstruosus, legendary headless humans and giants, stalk the wilderness, while fire-breathing dragons guard mountain passes. Even the polar regions are marked with ominous symbols, hinting at the unknown terrors lurking beyond the edge of the known world. Yet beneath the horror lies a surprising layer of accuracy. Olaus Magnus spent years traveling the region, and his map captures real coastal features, trade routes, and even indigenous Sami settlements with remarkable precision. The Carta Marina is a paradox, a blend of meticulous observation and wild superstition, where fact and folklore collide. This duality raises a haunting question: were the monsters purely symbolic, or did they represent something deeper? Some scholars argue they encoded navigational hazards, whirlpools as treacherous currents, sea serpents as rogue waves. Others see them as propaganda, stoking fear to deter rival nations from Nordic waters. Whatever the truth, the Carta Marina reminds us that maps have always been more than tools, they're mirrors of the human psyche, reflecting our deepest fears and fascinations. As we move forward, prepare to uncover a map that traded monsters for something far more strategic: the hidden trade wars of the Ming Dynasty. Leaving behind the sea monsters of the Carta Marina, we journey east to a map shrouded in imperial secrecy, the Kangxi Atlas. Crafted in the early 18th century under the orders of China's longest reigning emperor, this wasn't just a map, it was a weapon of statecraft. The Kangxi Emperor, a ruler obsessed with precision, commissioned teams of Jesuit astronomers and Manchu surveyors to chart his vast domains using cutting-edge triangulation techniques. The result, a staggeringly accurate atlas that mapped Tibet, Mongolia, and Xinjiang with unprecedented detail, regions the Qing dynasty had only recently conquered. What makes the Kangxi Atlas extraordinary is its dual purpose. On the surface, it was a scientific marvel, blending European cartography with Chinese tradition. But beneath the ink lay a political masterstroke. By meticulously documenting these frontier territories, Kangxi wasn't just recording geography, he was cementing claims. Every mountain range, river, and nomadic route was a silent argument for Qing sovereignty, a rebuttal to rival powers like the Dzunga Mongols or Tsarist Russia. The Atlas's creation was itself a covert operation. Jesuit missionaries like Jean-Baptiste Regis brought Western tools, sextants, theodolites, but disguised their work as celestial studies to avoid arousing suspicion. Meanwhile, Manchu officials recorded indigenous place names and tribal boundaries, intelligence that would later justify military campaigns. Some sheets even included hidden symbols marking strategic forts or resource-rich valleys visible only to trained eyes. Yet the Kangxi Atlas holds a darker legacy. Centuries later, modern governments would dust off these maps to bolster territorial disputes, from Tibet's status to Mongolia's borders. A reminder that cartography, no matter how scientific, is never neutral. It's a language of power, and the Kangxi Atlas spoke it fluently. As we turn the page, another map awaits, one that tried to solve the greatest navigational puzzle of its age. Now we set our sights on a map that dared to challenge the flaws of its time, the Rewritten Molyneux Map of 1599. At the height of the age of exploration, navigators faced a frustrating dilemma. The Mercator projection, while revolutionary for sea travel, wildly distorted the sizes of landmasses the farther they were from the equator. Greenland appeared as large as Africa, and Europe loomed over South America. Enter Edward Wright, a mathematician determined to fix the problem. Wright's breakthrough came from his meticulous recalculations of Mercator's grid, adjusting the spacing of latitude lines to better reflect true distances. His collaborator, Emery Molyneux, then translated these corrections onto a globe, the first English-made celestial globe, before adapting them to this groundbreaking map. The result was a navigational tool that offered explorers a more honest representation of the world's proportions, particularly in the higher latitudes where Mercator's distortions were most severe. But the Rewritten Molyneux Map wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a lifeline for sailors. By reducing errors in plotting courses, it lowered the risks of ships veering dangerously off track or miscalculating supplies. The map's influence stretched far beyond its era, laying groundwork for future cartographers to refine global projections. Yet, like many innovations, it had its limits. While it improved upon Mercator, it couldn't entirely eliminate distortion, a reminder that every map is a compromise between accuracy and usability. As we'll see, this tension between perfection and practicality would shape cartography for centuries to come. Next, we encounter a map that took a strikingly artistic approach to the same challenge. Turning now to a map that dared to merge the stars with the Earth, we find the Babylonian World Map of 1520, a stunning fusion of science and celestial mysticism. Crafted by German cartographer Peter Apian, this map broke from tradition with its heart-shaped projection, a bold artistic choice that captured the imagination of Renaissance Europe. But what truly set it apart was its intricate weaving of astrology into geography. Apian's map didn't just chart coastlines and kingdoms, it mapped the heavens onto the Earth. Each latitude was aligned with a zodiac sign, suggesting that the stars themselves could guide navigation. Sailors could, in theory, use the position of constellations to determine their place on the globe, blending astronomy with exploration in a way no map had before. This wasn't just decorative, it reflected the Renaissance belief that the cosmos and the Earth were intimately connected, a harmony of science and spirituality. Yet the Apian map was more than a celestial curiosity. Its heart-shaped design, though unconventional, offered a clever solution to the era's cartographic challenges. By curving the continents inward, Apian reduced some of the distortion plaguing flat maps, presenting a more balanced view of the world. It was a reminder that maps could be both practical and poetic, tools for navigation as well as windows into the worldview of their time. But even this innovative approach had its skeptics. Critics questioned whether astrology truly belonged on a map meant for explorers, and the heart-shaped projection never gained widespread use. Still, Apian's work stands as a testament to a time when science and myth were not yet divided, when the unknown was charted with equal parts logic and wonder. As we'll see next, not all maps embraced such artistic freedom. Some took symbolism to even more extreme heights. Now, let's step into a world where faith shaped geography, the Bunting Cloverleaf Map of 1581. Unlike any map before it, this striking creation by German theologian Heinrich Bunting wasn't just about accuracy, it was a visual sermon. The continents of Europe, Asia, and Africa were squeezed into a three-lobed cloverleaf, each leaf representing a person of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Jerusalem sat at the very center, a deliberate choice that placed Christianity at the heart of the known world. This wasn't mere cartography, it was theology in ink and parchment. Bunting's design ignored the growing scientific precision of his time, opting instead for a symbolic layout that reflected medieval Christian beliefs. The map's circular border even featured scenes from the Bible, reinforcing the idea that earthly geography was inseparable from divine order. For Bunting, the world wasn't just a place to explore, it was a sacred text to be decoded. Yet the cloverleaf map wasn't entirely detached from reality. Tucked between its symbolic lobes were real cities and trade routes, a nod to the practical needs of travelers. This blend of piety and pragmatism made it popular among pilgrims and scholars alike, though it baffled navigators who needed reliable coastlines. What's most fascinating is how Bunting's map reveals the tension between faith and science in the 16th century. While explorers like Mercator were refining maps for sailors, Bunting insisted that the world's true meaning lay in its spiritual shape. His cloverleaf wasn't just a map, it was a declaration that even geography could be an act of worship. As we'll soon see, not all maps of this era were content to stay grounded in earthly or heavenly matters. Some ventured into far stranger territory. But while some maps were shaped by faith, others were drawn by ambition. Enter the Burgundy map of the 18th century. Created by French cartographer Didier Robert de Burgundy, this wasn't just a geographical record, it was a bold statement of France's colonial dreams in North America. At a time when European powers were scrambling for control of the continent, every line on this map carried political weight. Burgundy's work meticulously charted the contested borders between French and British territories, with vast swaths of land labeled as Nouvelle France, New France. But what makes this map truly revealing are the detailed inscriptions of Native American tribal names and territories. Unlike many European maps that erased indigenous presence, Burgundy acknowledged the complex web of nations already thriving on the land. From the Iroquois Confederacy to the Algonquin peoples, these labels weren't just decorative, they were a tacit admission that colonial claims were far from absolute. Yet the map also served as propaganda. By exaggerating French-controlled regions and downplaying British settlements, Burgundy subtly reinforced France's territorial ambitions. Rivers and trade routes were drawn to emphasize French access deep into the continent, while British colonies were squeezed toward the coast. It was cartography as a chess move, designed to sway both public opinion and royal policy back in Europe. What's most striking is how the Burgundy map captures the era's high-stakes rivalry. Every mountain range and waterway was a potential battleground, every native alliance a strategic prize. This wasn't just a map of land, it was a map of power, ambition, and the fragile illusions of control. And as we'll see next, not all maps were content to play by the rules of empires. Some dared to imagine entirely new worlds. But while empires fought over borders, another map quietly reshaped the world. Meet the Stobnice map of 1512. Printed just 2 decades after Columbus's voyages, this Polish cartographer's work was among the very first to put the Americas on paper for all of Europe to see. Yet here's the twist: even as it introduced the so-called New World, it couldn't quite let go of the old one. Stobnice's map is a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, it boldly labels the Caribbean islands and parts of South America, acknowledging discoveries that shattered medieval worldviews. But look closer, and you'll find Ptolemy's ghost haunting the edges, an enclosed Indian Ocean, a misshapen Africa, and an Asia squeezed into ancient misconceptions. It's as if the mapmaker had one foot in the future and the other stuck in a 1,000-year-old past. What makes this map so revealing is its timing. Printed in Krakow, far from the coastal powers of Spain and Portugal, it proves how quickly geographic knowledge spread and how slowly old ideas died. Scholars argue over Stobnicz's sources. Was he copying smuggled Portuguese charts or piecing together rumors from merchants? Either way, his work became a bridge between eras, used by everyone from scholars to adventurers. The real irony, while Stobnic helped popularize the Americas, his Ptolemaic errors may have fueled more confusion. Sailors relying on his map would have found Asia much closer than it really was, a miscalculation that might have encouraged disastrous voyages. Yet that's the power of maps. They don't just show the world, they shape how we move through it. And as we'll discover next, not all mapmakers were content to follow the crowd. Some dared to redraw the rules entirely. But while some maps clung to old myths, others were tools of empire. Enter the Hondius map of 1606. This wasn't just a navigational chart, it was a declaration of Dutch ambition, etching their claims onto parchment as boldly as their ships carved routes across the oceans. Here's what made Hondius's work explosive. It was the first detailed map to show Australia's northern coastline, labeled as Nova Guinea, a tantalizing hint of the unknown southern land. But the real prize, the Spice Islands, meticulously plotted with Dutch flags fluttering over key ports like cloves and nutmeg, were already theirs. This wasn't geography, it was propaganda designed to taunt rival powers like Portugal and Spain. The brilliance and audacity of Hondius lay in his sources. He'd secretly acquired logs from the Dutch East India Company's voyages, including Willem Janszoon's sightings of Australia's Cape York Peninsula. Yet he also sprinkled in strategic omissions, leaving rival nations guessing about safe harbors or trade winds. Some historians argue these gaps weren't mistakes, they were traps luring competitors into perilous waters. What's often overlooked is how this map stoked tensions beyond Europe. Indigenous communities in the Moluccas, who'd traded spices for centuries, suddenly found their homes reduced to Dutch property lines. Hondius even sketched fictional alliances with local rulers, legitimizing conquests that hadn't yet happened. It's a stark reminder, maps didn't just record power, they created it. And as colonial rivalries heated up, one map would take deception to the next level, not by hiding borders, but by inventing them outright. Now, let's turn to a map that wasn't just about geography, it was a weapon in a war of ideas. The Zata map of 1776 arrived at a pivotal moment as American colonists fought to break free from British rule. But this wasn't a neutral document. It was a bold piece of propaganda, carefully crafted to reshape perceptions of the conflict. What made the Zata map so provocative? It deliberately exaggerated the borders of the fledgling United States, stretching its territory far beyond what was realistically controlled. The Carolinas sprawled westward, swallowing Native American lands. New England's boundaries bulged northward as if daring Britain to contest them. This wasn't cartographic error, it was psychological warfare. By making the colonies appear larger and more unified, the map sent a clear message. Independence wasn't just a rebellion, it was an unstoppable force. But the deception went deeper. Zata, an Italian publisher with ties to pro-revolutionary circles, also shrank British-held territories. Canada appeared cramped and isolated, while Spanish Florida was oddly diminished, as if to suggest European claims were already fading. Even the map's decorative elements played a role. Flourishes like liberty caps and defiant eagles framed the colonies, while British symbols were conspicuously absent. Historians have uncovered another layer to this cartographic gambit. The map circulated widely in Europe, where it influenced public opinion. By visually amplifying American strength, Zata undermined British credibility, making their military setbacks seem even more disastrous. Some argue it helped sway European powers like France toward supporting the revolution. Yet the map's most lasting impact might be its reminder that borders are never just lines on paper. They're stories about who owns what, who deserves freedom, and who gets erased. And as we'll see next, some maps took that erasure to chilling extremes, inventing lands that never existed to serve empires that did. Now let's journey from the political battlegrounds of the American Revolution to the shadowy world of Venetian espionage and lost kingdoms. The Gastaldi map of 1548 isn't just a snapshot of geography. It's a treasure trove of secrets, half-truths, and tantalizing mysteries. Created by Giacomo Gastaldi, Venice's most celebrated cartographer, this map was more than a navigational tool. It was a weapon of information, carefully designed to serve the interests of the Venetian Republic while teasing explorers with the allure of the unknown. What sets the Gastaldi map apart is its startling accuracy in depicting the Nile River's sources, a feat that baffled European scholars for centuries. While most maps of the era showed the Nile emerging from mythical lakes or biblical lands, Gastaldi's version traced it deep into Africa, aligning closely with what we now know to be true. How did he get it so right? The answer lies in Venice's vast spy network. Venetian merchants and diplomats operating undercover in Ottoman territories smuggled out Arab and African knowledge which Gastaldi quietly wove into his work. This wasn't just cartography, it was geopolitical intelligence disguised as art. But the map's real intrigue lies in its whispers of the Kingdom of Prester John, a legendary Christian empire rumored to exist somewhere in Africa or Asia. Gastaldi placed this mythical realm near the Nile's headwaters, surrounded by cryptic notes about its wealth and power. For European rulers, Prester John wasn't just a fairy tale. He was a potential ally against the Ottoman Empire, and Gastaldi's map stoked those fantasies deliberately. By hinting at this hidden kingdom, Venice could lure explorers and traders into regions where it held strategic interests, turning myth into a tool of influence. Yet the Gastaldi map also reveals a darker truth, the deliberate blurring of fact and fiction to serve empire. Some scholars believe the Prester John legend was a smokescreen, distracting rivals from Venice's real prize, the lucrative trade routes of the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. The map's lush illustrations of African kings and exotic beasts weren't just decoration. They were propaganda, painting these lands as both wondrous and ripe for domination. As we peel back the layers of Gastaldi's masterpiece, we're left with a question. Was this map a revelation or a deception? Perhaps it was both, a mirror of its time where knowledge was power and power demanded secrets. And as we'll see next, not all cartographic secrets were meant to be solved. Some were designed to vanish, like the phantom islands we'll encounter on our next stop. Now, let's step into the opulent world of 18th century cartography, where maps were as much about beauty as they were about secrets. The Ceuta map of 1730 is a masterpiece of Baroque artistry, dripping with gold leaf and intricate illustrations that make it look more like a royal painting than a navigational tool. But beneath its lavish surface lies something far more intriguing: hidden Jesuit survey data spanning from China to Paraguay, carefully woven into the maps designed by its creator, Matthias Ceuta. What makes this map extraordinary is its dual identity. On one hand, it was a status symbol for European elites, filled with allegorical figures and ornate borders that showcased wealth and power. On the other, it was a covert repository of knowledge gathered by Jesuit missionaries, who were some of the most skilled surveyors and scientists of their time. These missionaries traveled to remote corners of the globe, from the courts of the Qing dynasty to the jungles of South America, recording precise geographical details that rarely made it into public maps. Ceuta, with his connections to the Jesuit order, managed to embed this sensitive information into his work, creating a map that was both a decorative showpiece and a treasure trove of classified data. Take a closer look at the depiction of China, for example. While most European maps of the era relied on second-hand accounts and guesswork, Ceuta's version includes shockingly accurate details about the Great Wall and the Yangtze River, information that could only have come from Jesuit sources. Similarly, his rendering of Paraguay reveals hidden Jesuit missions and indigenous settlements, details that were often suppressed by colonial authorities. This wasn't just cartographic skill, It was a quiet act of defiance, preserving truths that powerful empires wanted to erase. But why hide such valuable data in plain sight? The answer lies in the political tensions of the time. The Jesuit order was under increasing scrutiny from European monarchs who saw their global influence as a threat. By disguising their findings within a beautifully crafted map, the Jesuits could share their knowledge with allies without attracting unwanted attention. The Ceuta map then becomes a puzzle, a blend of art and espionage where every flourish might conceal a secret. As we admire the map's grandeur, we're left to wonder how many other secrets lie buried in its ornate borders. And this dance between beauty and hidden truth isn't unique to Ceuta's work. Up next, we'll encounter a map where politics and precision collide even more dramatically, reshaping borders and sparking international rivalries. Now, let's turn our attention to a map that wasn't just about geography, it was a weapon in a high-stakes game of empire. The Delisle map of the 18th century is a striking example of how cartography could be used to push political agendas, especially when it came to the fierce rivalry between France and Russia over Alaska. Created by the French cartographer Guillaume Delisle, this map didn't just chart coastlines and rivers, it subtly redrew borders to challenge Russian claims in North America. What makes the Delisle map so fascinating is its precision, a rarity for its time. Delisle was known for his meticulous research, and this map reflects that with surprisingly accurate depictions of Alaska's coastline. But look closer, and you'll notice something deliberate. The boundaries of Russian territory are carefully minimized, while French interests in the region are subtly emphasized. This wasn't an accident. Delisle was working under the patronage of the French crown, and his map was a quiet but powerful statement against Russian expansion. At the time, Russia was aggressively pushing into Alaska, establishing fur trading posts and claiming vast stretches of land. France, eager to counterbalance Russian influence, used maps like Delisle's to assert its own claims and rally support among other European powers. The map's neutral precision gave it an air of authority, making its political message all the more persuasive. For example, Delisle's placement of place names and tribal territories subtly suggested that Russia's hold on Alaska was weaker than it appeared, leaving room for French or even British intervention. But the Delisle map wasn't just a tool for diplomacy, it also revealed the limits of European knowledge. While it was advanced for its era, it still contained gaps and guesswork, particularly in the interior regions of Alaska. These blank spaces became battlegrounds of their own, as rival nations filled them with speculative geography to suit their ambitions. In this way, the map wasn't just a reflection of the world, it was an active participant in shaping it. As we examine Delisle's careful strokes, we're reminded that maps are never truly neutral. They're shaped by the hands that draw them and the powers that fund them. And this tension between accuracy and ambition sets the stage for our next map, where exploration and mythology collide in the race to chart the unknown. Now we step into a new era of cartography, where science and exploration began to reshape the world as we knew it. The Arrowsmith map of the 19th century marks a turning point, a bridge between the old ways of map-making and the precision of the modern age. This wasn't just a map, it was the culmination of one of history's most daring expeditions, the journey of Lewis and Clark across the American West. Aaron Arrowsmith, the mapmaker behind this masterpiece, was renowned for his meticulous attention to detail. Unlike the politically charged maps of earlier centuries, Arrowsmith's work was grounded in first-hand accounts and rigorous surveying. When Lewis and Clark returned from their epic trek, their journals and sketches became the foundation for this map, offering Europeans and Americans their first clear glimpse of the vast, uncharted territories beyond the Mississippi. What sets the Arrowsmith map apart is its stunning accuracy. For the first time, the Rocky Mountains were depicted with realistic proportions, and the winding course of the Missouri River was charted with remarkable precision. Indigenous tribal territories were carefully noted, reflecting the explorers' reliance on Native American guides, a rare acknowledgement of local knowledge in an era of colonial expansion. But even this groundbreaking map had its mysteries. Some areas remained blank or vaguely sketched, not due to political maneuvering, but because the terrain was simply too vast or treacherous to document fully. These gaps hint at the challenges Lewis and Clark faced: rugged landscapes, harsh weather, and the sheer scale of the unknown. Yet, those very Chinese letter spaces also fueled the imagination of settlers, speculators, and adventurers, drawing them westward with promises of opportunity. The Arrowsmith map didn't just record geography, it accelerated a nation's expansion. It became a vital tool for pioneers, a blueprint for manifest destiny, and a testament to the power of exploration. As we trace its lines, we see more than rivers and mountains. We see the birth of a new chapter in history, where maps ceased to be mere illustrations and became instruments of transformation. And with that transformation came new questions, new frontiers, and new ways of seeing the world. A theme that leads us perfectly into our next map, where ambition and artistry collide once again. Now, let's turn our attention to a map so ambitious it feels like a Renaissance-era Google Earth, the Urbano Monti map of 1587. Imagine a world where cartography wasn't just about accuracy, but about capturing the entire cosmos in one breathtaking masterpiece. That's exactly what Milanese nobleman Urbano Monti set out to do, creating a 60-sheet atlas designed to be assembled into a single, massive disk nearly 10 feet wide. What makes this map extraordinary isn't just its size, it's the way Monti reimagined the Earth itself. Unlike traditional maps of his time, he placed the North Pole at the center, radiating outward with continents, oceans, and even celestial charts. The map was meant to be rotated, allowing viewers to spin it like a dial and explore the world from a completely new perspective. It was as much a scientific tool as it was a work of art, blending geography with astrology, heraldry, and vivid illustrations of mythical creatures and distant kingdoms. Monti's vision was ahead of its time. He incorporated details from the latest explorations, like the coasts of Japan and the Americas, while also weaving in medieval legends such as the elusive Kingdom of Prester John. His map wasn't just a snapshot of the known world, it was an attempt to document everything from real trade routes to the imagined edges of the Earth. Yet, the Urbano Monti map was nearly lost to history. Unlike printed maps, his hand-painted masterpiece existed in only a few copies, and its sheer complexity meant it was rarely assembled as intended. For centuries, it languished in obscurity until modern scholars painstakingly digitized and stitched it together, revealing Monti's genius in full. Today, we can finally appreciate it as he envisioned, a rotating, immersive portrait of a world both real and imagined. This map challenges us to think differently about how we see our planet. Was Monti's polar-centric view a mere curiosity, or did it hint at deeper truths about Earth's geography? And what does it say about the Renaissance mind, a time when art, science, and exploration collided in spectacular ways? As we move to our final map, we'll see how these ancient secrets still echo in the modern era. Now we arrive at a map that brings us full circle, connecting ancient mysteries with cutting-edge science. The CIA's declassified Ancient Earth map isn't just a relic of the past. It's a modern reconstruction that reveals how our planet looked thousands of years ago, when coastlines were unrecognizable and ice sheets dominated the landscape. Created using satellite data, geological surveys, and declassified intelligence, this map pieces together lost worlds, like the vast land bridge between Siberia and Alaska, once trodden by early humans migrating into the Americas. It shows how sea levels rose dramatically after the last ice age, swallowing entire civilizations beneath the waves. Imagine walking across what's now the English Channel, or standing on the fertile plains that once stretched from India to Australia, now submerged under the Indian Ocean. But here's the twist. This map wasn't made for historians. The CIA originally developed it to study how ancient climate shifts could impact modern geopolitics, like hidden resource deposits or disputed maritime borders. Yet, by accident, it became one of the most revealing tools for understanding human migration and lost cultures. For example, it hints at why ancient flood myths from Noah's Ark to Gilgamesh appear in so many traditions. Were these stories passed down from ancestors who witnessed rising waters erase their world? What's fascinating is how this high-tech map echoes the speculative spirit of older maps we've explored. Just like Urbano Monte blended fact and fantasy, the Ancient Earth map forces us to confront how much of human history might lie underwater, waiting to be rediscovered. It's a reminder that cartography isn't just about where we are, it's about uncovering where we've been. And as technology advances, who knows what other secrets these ancient landscapes might reveal. As we close this journey through 50 ancient maps, one truth stands clear: history is not a fixed story but a living puzzle, constantly reshaped by new discoveries. These maps are more than parchment and ink. They are windows into lost worlds, each one challenging what we thought we knew. From the Piri Reis Map's icy enigmas to the CIA's digital reconstructions, they remind us that every era redraws the past in its own image. So here's a question to leave you with. If maps from centuries ago could hold such startling secrets, what might today's maps conceal? Future generations may look back at our satellite images and GPS coordinates with the same awe we feel for these ancient charts, uncovering layers of meaning we never imagined. The quest to understand our world is never truly finished. If you've enjoyed unraveling these cartographic mysteries, don't stop here. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because history's greatest stories are still being pieced together, and we'll be exploring them all. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the next map you see might just hold a secret waiting to be found.